Hello, welcome to this BW Wellbeing World Dialogue with me, Dr. Annurag Batra. Today we have two Dr. Batras on the show, the much acclaimed homeopath, entrepreneur, a playwright, a musician, a photographer, an author, and more importantly, a very interesting and warm human being, Dr. Mukesh Batra on my show. Dr. Mukesh Batra, welcome to BW Wellbeing World Dialogue. And congratulations on your latest book, Feel Good, Heal Good. This is your 10th book.
Yeah, that's right.
When do you practice your homeopathy and entrepreneurship and still get to write 10 books?
That's a very good question, but when you have passion, then you can do anything. People who say, I don't have time to do something, they really don't have the inclination to do it. This is my 10th book, and for the last 5 years, I've been writing one book every year. I'm saying, you've been a writer, you've been an author, you publish so many magazines. You know the kind of effort that it takes. I mean, it took me 2 years to write this book, but it was being done while I was writing and doing other work as well. So very often what I do is, I have a little home in Goa, and you visited it, there. And so what I do is I go there, I shut myself, totally from the world. And then I write my thoughts, and maybe for about 2 months, and then of course I come and then I have to re-edit it and re-edit it and re-edit and re-edit it. Because, publication and publishing a book means that it must be perfect, and there should be no printer's errors in it. So it takes in a lot of effort, but like I said, when there's a will, there's a way. And I'm happy because, I want to leave my legacy behind for people. I want my experience to be known by people. I want them to benefit from whatever I have, experienced in life, so that they don't have to go through the same problems that I had.
So you're absolutely right, Dr. Mukesh Batra. This is your 50th year of practice. You're completing 5 decades of healing people, of being India's leading homeopath, and through homeopathy you created entrepreneurship, and now your son is taking it forward, and you really expanded what you've done. This is your 10th book, and this is a book about, in some way, preventing mental health disorders, preventing suicide. Why this book? Why now?
I think the time is just very, very appropriate, because we are going through actually a very major mental health crisis. And this is across all age groups. Whether you have teenagers, whether you have kids, whether you have old people. In old age, you've got loneliness. In young people, you've got digital addiction. You have somebody who actually says that I go into depression because one person unfollowed me, because you had more likes than what I had, And of course, in the case of children also, there's so much of competition, and there's so much of parental pressure. So at all age groups, there's so much of stress, and there's so much of anxiety, and there's so much of problem that mental health is now becoming a very, very major issue. Now, why did I write this book? To answer your question. So there were 3 or 4 reasons. The first was that I wanted to open a conversation on this topic, because in spite of people like Deepika Padukone, and then Khans, and so many other people coming out with it, even some sports persons, even Hardik Pandya saying that he got because he got jeered in the cricket matches, even he went through a lot of emotional stress. And of course, internationally, you have also Jim Carrey, it makes you laugh, but even he's undergone depression. So there are so many examples of people coming out in the open, but it's still a very hushed topic. And I wanted to bring it out in the open. I wanted to have some conversation on it so that people become aware. Now, I'm also, not very happy to tell you this, that during Hahnemann's time, when the founder of homeopathy, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, who founded homeopathy, as a German doctor, it was believed that mental health resulted from some spirit being in your body. And therefore, the treatment at that time was flogging. They actually took a whip and they flogged, and with the belief that the spirit will get out of the body and the person will become healed. Now, can you imagine that was more than 250, 60 years ago? Even today, the media has reported a case of a place near where we are sitting, an area in Maharashtra called Buldana, where outside a mosque, people who are mentally ill are actually chained and left over there with nobody to care for. So the direction in the way people are treated in mental health in all these years hasn't changed. And therefore, I felt that there was a big need to actually talk about it. So this is, one point that I wanted to make, to talk to you about. That it's very important to start this conversation. It's very important that it doesn't stay behind hidden doors. उस ज़माने में हमको, क्या करते थे? अरे, you're feeling depressed, you're not well. अच्छा, सो जाओ, सुबह में ठीक हो जाएगा. You'll wake up okay. It's not a problem. You can deal with it. Today we know it's not so. The second thing is that, as you said, now I've got 50 years of practice, medical practice. And most of the people the kind of patients that we see are people who suffer from what are called NCDs. NCDs are non-communicable disorders. So, modern medicine has kind of, done very well to control infections, because you've got antibiotics, and if you use them correctly, you can control your infection. But for chronic problems, there is really nothing that they have to offer. And homeopathy, being safe and going to the root, actually has offers great treatments. So one of them is also mental health, because a lot of problems I realized, which are presented to us as physical problems, are actually originating from a mental problem. And the mental problem doesn't have to be now. It has to be a suppression of emotion as a child. I mean, I've treated a lot of girls, for example, who have problems today with acne, with PCOD, with all other, so many other issues, menstrual issues. And why? Because they had a very, very strict father who didn't allow them to go out at all. I remember the case of a young child who used to get severe asthmatic attacks every time the father went abroad for a job. Every time he went to the Gulf for his job, the child, few years old, used to get a severe asthmatic attack. And a homeopathic medicine called magnesium carb, which is very good in emotional insecurity, actually cured him. Similarly, I remember another case of a person who was, he was working in a British bank, multinational bank, and the bank shut. In between there was, nationalization, and foreign banks left. And he then had to go for an interview, and his junior interviewed him. And he said, that guy, I'm saying he was my junior, he's asking me these questions as if I don't know this answer. How can you do something to me like that? Now that stayed in his mind for 10 years. For 10 years he suffered from a severe backache. And then giving him a medicine which went to the emotional cause of that backache, chronic backache. It was again an emotional cause. And then giving him a medicine called Staphysagree homeopathic medicine, which is for any slight or hurt that you have, and that stays within you, which you cannot express. So I'm just giving you some examples to show you how these kind of emotional problems
build up.
And today the number of psychosomatic problems that are there are absolutely, unbelievable. So whenever you think of a physical problem, in a lot of cases, there is some emotional thing behind it. So, and then finally, of course, that homeopathy being holistic medicine. Also, I've seen in my practice that a lot of chemical medicines that are given, they are addictive and they have a lot of side effects. And I don't want to talk about the side effects, but
there is weight gain, there is loss of sleep.
There's weight gain, there's a lot of sleep, there's loss of libido.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
And everything else. So, and there are so many other things. There is also aggressiveness sometimes, behavioral changes. So what you set out to cure actually then becomes a cause, and it then becomes worse. So homeopathy is non-addictive and it is safe. So I wanted to also present that there is an alternative, and therefore basically what I'm doing is I'm sharing my experience and I'm giving people hope. I'm letting them know that they should not panic, they should not worry. There is something that is available to them, and therefore they should come out and speak, and they should go to a good homeopathic doctor and take help whenever they need it.
Absolutely, Dr. Batra. What you're dealing with is a real issue in India. More than 75 million people have been diagnosed with mental health issues. There may be many more which have not yet been diagnosed. So it could be 100 million people. We are almost having 1,70,000 plus suicides every year. They could be 2 lakh.
Yes, they're 2.5.
Now, with these numbers, it's a very big issue.
Yes.
My first question to you, specifically in the context of this book, Feel Good, Heal Good, Staying Happy with Homeopathy, is how do you diagnose a person is suicidal, and how do you prevent suicide?
That's really very difficult answer, because there's no way you can diagnose it, first of all, because you can only diagnose it as depression. And you can, and suicide is the result of that.
How do you define depression? How do you recognize depression?
So there are many ways. There are medical ways of doing it. There are 2 basic types of depression. One is called endogenous depression, and one is called exogenous depression. Exogenous depression means from external causes. So most of that I have seen with my experience is come from family conflicts. So husband and wife don't get along together. The kid is rebellious. The father is too tough. There are in-law problems, and so on and so forth. There are brothers fighting for property. I mean, there are so many examples. We all have been through it at some stage or the other. So that's an example of exodus. Exodus. So there's something that's happening from outside, exogenous, where something is not in your control, but it affects you. And the other one, and of course you can control your situation, so you can change your situation, you can learn how to deal with it. And the other one is endogenous, which happens because of certain chemicals in your body, which get generated. It happens also because if there's a strong family history of depression, it can run in your family. Sometimes it can even skip a generation. So if your grandfather had it, which of course that time it was not easily recognized, but they'll tell you कि वो हमेशा चारपाई में बैठते थे, घंटों भर उठते नहीं थे. These are all kind of signs of depression. So when you don't get too much of involvement, and I found this particularly after COVID, there are a lot of particularly older people who stop going out of the house.
Absolutely.
And it's not just fear of germs or fear of catching infection, but it's now become like a lifestyle issue. And they don't want to meet people. So this is a kind of mild depression. So you recognize depression by these kind of symptoms of not wanting to meet people, wanting to be alone, wanting to be by yourself. And suicide is just one moment of madness. You can prevent depression and you can prevent somebody going to that stage. But I could be just standing on my balcony and suddenly I get that thing in one snap in my brain and then I fall off or I throw myself off. It's very difficult to prevent that. The only way you can do it is by getting medical attention or getting counseling when you're feeling depressed. So if you're being treated, if you're being spoken about and spoken to during that phase of depression, you don't need to go over the wall.
Absolutely. Now, depression is a little acute, if I may say, but all of us a lot of people suffer from anxiety on a daily basis. How can you lower anxiety? How can you first recognize that you're anxious?
So, you get certain symptoms, like you get, your pulse starts beating fast, your heart starts beating fast, and you're not in love. I mean, if you're in love, I understand that you're getting a heartbeat, but you're not in love and your heart is beating very fast. You get what is called medically tachycardia. And there are many other symptoms. You start sweating, you get, your respiratory rate goes up. Sometimes you get, panicky feeling, as if you're going to die, something's going to happen. It happens at some stage or the other to a lot of us. But again, there are different types of anxiety. So one anxiety which is, very, very common is anticipatory anxiety. So that happens when I don't know what's going to happen. I have an exam coming up. Am I going to pass? Am I going to fail? I have an interview with Dr. Annurag Batra. How am I going to do in it? How is it going to come out? Am I going to come out okay or not? So there's something anticipatory when something is happening in my life, whether it's good or bad. And that's one of the commonest reasons
for anxiety.
For anxiety. But after some time, it becomes a nervous disorder. So it can even happen without any reason, because once your nervous system kind of breaks, then you don't need a reason. Then it can happen just anything. It can happen even when I'm stepping out on the street. It can happen when I'm getting into my car. And when it becomes very severe, then you get what are called panic attacks. Then you actually start sweating. You think I'm getting a heart attack. You need to rush to the hospital. Of course, there's nothing wrong with your heart, but it's a panic attack. So anxiety is from different. Then
how does a common person?
And then you get performance anxiety again.
Yes.
So you're going on stage, and then you're trying to say that, well, I've got to perform well, or I have to go for an exam. Then before an exam or before
a job interview,
or before a job interview, I find that the toilets are always full, because you'll always find people going to urinate more often. And there's something called an irritable bowel syndrome, which again is actually nothing to do with the physical problem, but it's to do with the mental problem. It comes because you're anxious. It comes because you're worried. And because of that, you'll also find so many times just before the flight also, especially in Indian flights, the toilets are always full because they're just running to the toilet because they don't want to either use the bathroom on the flight, or they're anxious about how the flight is going to be.
Sure. How does one lower the anxiety? Is there, apart from seeking counseling, apart from going to a homeopath, apart from going through an homeopathic course, are there other simpler ways of lowering your anxiety?
So one simple thing is, of course, learning breathing techniques. Is very easy. You don't have to go to any yoga teacher to do that. You just learn how to control your breath. And every time when you breathe out and you breathe in and you just count it till count of 3, probably it will disappear. So that's a very simple, easy solution which costs no money, easy to do. Anybody can try it. Then of course there is homeopathic medicine called Califos, which is very easily available, very cheap. It can be used. Of course, not in cases of acute anxiety, but that's the first thing that you can self-help yourself. And then, of course, understanding what causes anxiety, understanding that this is something that will pass away, therefore I should not panic. What happens is when anxiety gives to a panic attack, then that's where the problem starts.
Sure.
So recognizing it and being aware of it, and then helping yourself at that stage can precipitate a severe attack.
Thank you so much. I want to focus on two aspects which are very important to an individual for his or her well-being. One is eating disorders. How does one spot an eating disorder and then cure it? And other is about insomnia or sleep. These two are very important. If you eat right or if you sleep right, I think you'll be a calmer person. I can say it from my own experience. These are two, So tell me a bit about how can one diagnose eating disorders and then cure them?
Perfect. I'm saying you're absolutely correct. Very often we tend to think that eating disorders are actually just something which is physical, because I like food, I'm a foodie, and I want to eat whatever is before my plate, and I don't control my portions. But what we don't realize is that eating disorders are actually emotional problems. And also what happens even in children, what are we doing? We are substituting love and affection
By food.
by food. And therefore I say, मेरे पास समय नहीं है.
इसको खाने दो, चॉकलेट खाने दो,
इसको मैं
कोला पीने दो.
मैं पैसा दे रहा हूँ.
हाँ.
तुम जाओ, go to wherever you go, fast food, satisfy your thing. And then I try to think that fast food is an emotional satisfaction for me versus the love and affection I should have got from my parents. The mind starts equating it
Sure.
with it. And that's how so people need to understand that also, we all know, for example, that when you're depressed or when you're anxious or when you're worried, say, for example, you've got a problem at your work or you've got some exam coming up, what happens? You either eat too much or you lose appetite. So again, that's an emotional response. So you're either not hungry or you eat whatever before you because it satisfies you. You think I'm now getting guilty pleasure from eating all the things that I was denied. Sometimes it's also, like for example, in children, it's a revolt against parents. I don't like my dad because he's firing me. And therefore I will eat what I should not be eating. But in that I'm killing myself.
Sure.
So I think understanding that eating disorders are emotional disorders. And again, we know that we had the royal family, for example, in England as well, and that got popularized because of Lady Di, because she suffered from bulimia. So when it reaches, you have anorexia, which is when because of anxiety disorder, you don't eat and you feel guilty of eating. And the other is bulimia, which is like the other extreme. So what happens is when you eat, you feel so guilty that you vomit. You put your finger in and you start, taking out whatever, because you don't want to make sure that you don't feel guilty about eating. You take it out. And that then becomes a very major problem. And very often I've seen anorexic girls, for example, and I've treated them, where you find that they were missing their periods because they were so severely anemic. And what they used to do was they would just put their menstrual pads, wrap it up, and throw it in the waste paper basket. So that the mother could not get an idea that she was missing her periods. But she was missing the periods because she was severely anemic, because she was not eating anything. So again, now that was again an emotional disorder. It's not a physical disorder.
Sure.
And the moment you start eating well, everything comes back. But it's again affects the mind. So whether you're under eating or whether you're overeating, understand that it's a stress-related problem or it's an emotional problem, and therefore seek help for it before it becomes too late.
Now let me come to a lot of people have
Insomnia, you said.
insomnia.
Yeah.
They can't sleep well. And I talk a lot about sleep because I sleep 25 days a month. I sleep 8+ hours. This week I had one day when I slept very little, and the next day I was not functioning well. So in my view, sleep is the most important constituent of a good life, of a healthy life, of a balanced life. How does one cure insomnia? How does one sleep?
I absolutely agree with you. One of my earlier books, when I said that I now write one book every year for the last 5 years, one of my earlier books was the 13-step series which I co-wrote with Ashwin Sanghi, and that was called 13 Steps to Bloody Good Health. The first chapter in that was on sleep. And I jokingly said that the first chapter is on sleep for 2 reasons. Number one, of course, is because I thought it's a very important part even 5 years ago, and now it's become even worse after COVID. And the second reason was I said that, if people can stay awake after the first chapter, I know I've written a good book. So it actually, that book did very well. We sold more than 40,000 copies and it's now in reprint again. The first chapter actually showed me when I researched that more than 95% of Indians are sleep deprived. Now, when I talk about sleep deprivation, it's not just the number of hours you sleep, it's also the quality of sleep that you get. So really the best time to sleep is 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock medically. But of course you can still sleep whenever you can, whenever you get sleep. But today we are so sleep deprived also because we have OTT and therefore we are watching television.
Binge watching TV.
Binge watching TV.
We can order food in the night at 2 a.m.,
Yeah.
12 p.m.
Yeah.
And that if you eat food at night, it will slow down your metabolism.
Yes, in your digestion.
And then it will impact your sleep. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So the combination of...
And the mobile phone and the white light that you...
Yes.
So for example, I don't do emails in the night now. I mean,
Good.
I keep my phone at least 1 hour before I sleep away. So these are things that help me sleep better. And really, sleep discipline is the most important because...
So I think you answered my questions. So you have all the answers because you've experienced it.
Right.
And rightly so. So yes, digital addiction is a problem. Watching OTT television, the combination of the gig economy where you get food at home at any time of the night, together with the fact that you have so much of entertainment at the press of a button, is taking and depriving you of sleep. So that's true. Now what is the solution? The first solution and the first thing to understand is that like anything else in life, sleep is a discipline. And therefore it's a pattern. Now every time you disturb the pattern, that's why it's always challenging for people who are flying through time zones, people who are for example air hostesses and captains, people who are in that industry, because they change time zones very often, so sleep becomes a major problem. But otherwise for normal people it really happens because if you keep sleeping at different times of the day, then your sleep pattern gets lost. So it's a discipline. So you want to get that back.
They say ideal is to sleep at the same time
every day.
And you talk about the circadian rhythm.
That's right.
It says the best time to sleep is between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m.
Perfect.
Yeah. So to be able to be disciplined about your time of sleep
Yes.
and amount of sleep will have an overall positive impact on every aspect of your life.
Of your well-being.
How balanced you eat, how you're mindful in the conversations.
Perfect.
Your attentiveness. So this is something I really have experienced and I believe in. So, I try and be very disciplined about my sleep.
Absolutely.
I fly through time so that I can be in the hotel, sleep well and wake up next day. Or wake up at the right time and then fly. I've stopped doing early morning or very late night flights. Small thing, but I think for me it works.
Like I said, it's a discipline. So you cannot keep being erratic in your sleep. So you cannot say, no, I'm going to now party till 2 o'clock and then tomorrow I'm going to try to sleep at 8 o'clock. It doesn't happen. You got to, condition yourself. It's a practice. Sure. And therefore that's the first thing. The second thing, as you said, that at least half an hour before, put your mobile aside and generally in another room, not in the same room. Charge it in another room so that you don't even look at it. And so that those electronic waves don't actually get to you. The third thing, and I'm sorry to say it, but this is one reason where no news is good news.
Sure.
Because today...
They will play on your mind.
Because today all news is bad news.
Yeah, there will be negative stimuli to your brain.
Exactly. So when people actually are watching their phone or their television, with news where there's war, conflict, today we're not living in a very happy world. Then those are the images that will go into your brain, and therefore it's going to accept your, disturb your sleep patterns. So I think these are the few things that you can easily do. Don't overeat, because again you can get hyperacidity in the night. Don't go to bed immediately after eating. Rest for half an hour. Maybe take just a short walk if you need to after some time, not immediately, and then go to bed. So I think this is the other thing, that what happens is we just have a heavy meal and a late meal, and then we try to go to bed. So these are, I think, few things that one can easily kind of change.
And there's one more, and your friend Blossom Kochar told me that.
Yeah.
Is aromatherapy. There are certain aromas.
Yes.
You can have a chamomile tea that cools you down. Rachna told me that. And lavender can be a very big help in sleep if you have lavender. And again, these things I personally, I really don't need them because, I get tired but I think sleep is a very important thing.
I totally agree with you. And homeopathically also you can take Passiflora mother tincture, which helps very well. So there are lots of sleeping aids which are natural, and therefore you don't need to get addicted to drugs and to, because your need for them will keep on increasing.
So you become dependent.
Yeah.
Now let me focus on 4 main areas that you bring out in the book. One is ADHD, the other is anger, third is loneliness, and fourth is mood swings. Let me start with mood swings first.
Okay.
I know of people whose mood swings did govern how they function in office, how they function at home. And I can say maybe 10 years back I used to have mood swings. I can't say I'm at zero, but I recognize the day I'm less on sleep. So I stay away from certain conversations. So, I have been able to balance that out. How does one recognize that one has mood swings? And how do you become more calmer and minimize mood swings?
So, the first thing is that everybody has mood swings. And it's only natural to have mood swings. The question is, how do you deal with it? How you
low energy, high energy.
And how do you react to it? And when it becomes extreme. And I think here a very important point, as you suggested, to really bring about to your audience, is that when they become extreme, then there's a certain, mental condition called bipolar. So when they are bipolar, then they behave like this. With some people, they are very nice, and in some moments they are so good, and in other moments they become aggressive and they become, not very pleasant. So that's again, it's not a mood swing, but it's an extreme of personality. One personality is very good and one personality is very aggressive and very bad. So that's what is not right. That needs medical attention, and it can be treated. A mood swing, again, like I said, in homeopathy we've got many medicines which I've written in my book. And certain minor mood swings are okay, but when again we become, what is your reaction to it? So, okay, fine, if I'm in a bad mood and then I just, sit quietly for some time and it passes away, it's okay, I don't need any treatment. But if I'm having a mood swing and then I start shouting at everybody who comes before me, I abuse people in my office, then that's not right.
And Dr. Mukesh Batra, I'll tell you, I'll say that, I've seen how much the words have an impact on person. If you say an unkind word to anyone, it stays with them.
Yeah.
And it stays beyond the action. You don't have to. So I have very consciously, I can't say I got to zero, but I got to 1 and I'll get to 0. Where I hold back unkind words, I am less judgmental. Zero judgmental is not. And I'm very calibrated about the words I use. And I feel calmer because I regret every time I'm aggressive with someone. I feel it's an overreaction. Right? So, and I also feel, sir, when you're aggressive, actually you're depressed. That's why I see people, I'm not a doctor in the sense, I'm PhD, not a medical, but I feel, is there a connection between aggression and depression?
Sometimes yes, because the people who are depressed, they react in two ways. One is they become quiet, they don't interact, and the other is sometimes they become aggressive as well. But I would say aggression is much less common, and quietness and sadness and passiveness is more common.
So now let me talk about anger. I see much more angry people in flights, in car parkings.
Road rage.
Generally, I see overreaction from people.
तुम्हें पता नहीं मेरा बाप कौन है.
हाँ जी.
So all of that happens. Yeah, with all of us. I'm saying
yes,
you see it everywhere.
And there's less patience, there's less acceptance.
I think the basic thing is there's less acceptance, there's less tolerance in society today. And there's generally more conflict. And that's really what's happening. So it's really a societal problem and not a medical problem. But we can only change our reaction to it. So by making sure that we are not so angered so easily, by making sure that our mind is calmer and therefore it doesn't react to situations which are beyond our control, you can actually help yourself. So up to a point, there is a solution. But like I said, it's a society in which we live. If you're going to live in a war zone and with in a conflict all the time, somewhere your body is going to react.
Now ADHD, it's a big issue.
Yes.
People have their mobile phones, looking at the mobile phones all the time. It also increases ADHD. That may not be the cause,
yes, no.
Right? How does one recognize ADHD and how does one deal with it? How must rectify it?
So first of all, the Instagram generation has actually made our attention span very less. And that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's the full word for ADHD. And therefore we are now getting a generation of young people who cannot concentrate more than 1 minute, because that's what I've been conditioned to do. And for example,
short reels, short form content,
short form
scrolling,
no
attention, so easy to scroll.
So today if I want to watch a kind of even an ad, and if it's 2 or 3 minutes long, I don't even have the patience to watch it, because my mind is not trained that it has to be 30 seconds. I'm saying, as you know, in YouTube they tell you that if there's no attention span in the first 6 seconds,
The person will move to the next one.
they move to the next one. So today you're looking at a microcosm where within 6 seconds you have to get the person's attention. That's how difficult it is. And therefore young people today have an attention deficit disorder. So what happens is they can't concentrate. They can't read a book, they can't read one chapter, they can only read 1 or 2 lines and then they get disinterested. And we find that in a lot of children. The second way is because it's hyperactivity. You'll find them very restless. Like for example, in a clinic I find they can't even sit for 1 minute. They're fidgety, they're doing like this, they're getting up, they're walking, or they're throwing things, So that's how you can make out. So it's the symptoms which actually lead you to that. And unfortunately, again, chemical drugs are not really the answer. They have too many side effects and they're addictive and they slow you down totally.
These are things which can be cured through, of course, homeopathy. They can be cured through, the 3 things that help you in a better life. One is nutrition, the kind of food you eat. Second is movement, which can be just walking. And
perfect.
And third is, of course, yoga. I do yoga 3 to 4 times a week. Trust me, it has helped me so much.
Sure.
I can't say I meditate, but it does help me. I've become calmer, I know it. And the best certificate is from your wife, because, she really knows you well. Now, when you talk of suicide, one of the biggest things is people feel that they are not heard. They feel lonely. Loneliness has become a very big epidemic, whether it's in young people
yes.
and definitely in old people. How does one cure loneliness?
Again, you can't, because the word cure is a very specific word, because that means that you're going to get rid of it forever, which really cannot happen. So young people are lonely today because we are getting more insular, because we think that we can reach the world through our mobile phones, and therefore we don't need to meet people. So our personal interactions are becoming less, and because the personal interactions are becoming less, we're getting more and more lonely without even realizing it. And we actually, our social skills are actually diminishing to such an extent that we are becoming awkward when we have to come out and talk to people, because we don't know how to meet people, we don't know how to talk to them, we don't know how to behave with other people, because we are doing everything in the
digital realm.
In the digital realm, in an unreal kind of situation. So that happens in young people. Now again, unfortunately, again, all over the world and also happening in India, is that we are now wanting to live on our own. We are leaving our parents. That whole family thing of, Suraj Bharjatia's movies, like how they used to be, the good old days, and they used to do so well. Today, it has very little relevance, because today people don't want to live with old people. And today there are so many even high-end old age homes which are kind of doing well. So you're disowning your parents who looked after you all their life, and that again causes loneliness, because today is for example, look at India. It's a young India. It's a vibrant India. The maximum people are young, and therefore it doesn't have the time and the patience for old people.
People are so ambitious.
For an
They're
old
chasing
society.
money, bigger homes, bigger cars,
Absolutely.
bigger designations, more money. They forget their parents. I think as a parent, I now know what it means to get time and attention
Yes.
and affection from your children. It means the world, and I'm sure it means the same to my parents. I think it's again a societal issue,
and
a cultural issue.
And I always say that, you, I mean, not me so much, but you and your a little bit younger generation, because a lot of my doctors now they've been with me for like 25 years. So I always call them that they're the sandwich generation, because they are sandwiched between the youth, the ambitions of their children, and the caring of old parents. And so they actually caught in between. So, but they have to learn how to deal with it. So yes, it's a societal problem, but you can also actually use some homeopathic medicines to kind of help you deal with it. But the answer again lies with, finding some mode of entertainment, meeting people.
Having a feeling of community.
Yeah, community development.
Yes.
And
a passion for something.
Yes, that's right.
Now, Dr. Mukesh Batra, of course, this book, Feel Good, Heal Good, has suggestions from a homeopathic standpoint and a practical standpoint, what to do to be able to feel good and heal good. How does one live a balanced life? How does one make sure that while the environment around us needs us to be in a certain way, we still find our moorings, we find our balanced anchor, if I may use. What are your suggestions for a good balanced life?
On the physical level, you already mentioned it
Walking.
in your conversation, which is movement, because they say now that sitting is the new smoking, and we've already been sitting long enough now. So sitting is the new smoking. You need to have movement at all times, whatever way you move, whether it's walking, whether it's exercise. Nutrition, because there's another very interesting quote which says that if you don't make food your medicine, then medicine will become your food. So that's important. Sleep, you already mentioned. The fourth point which we are missing, and I think that's very important here as well, is contentment and internal happiness.
Tripti.
So unless you get that,
nothing will work.
Then nothing will work. So ultimately, like what we believe, holistic health, it has to be physical health, emotional health, mental health, and spiritual health. So unless you get that call from within, that's the thing which is going to balance everything else. So you need to have that drive and that internal feeling of happiness from within. And somebody asked me a question in one of the interviews. They said, "Can you give us a talk on how can you chase happiness?" You can't chase happiness. The more you chase it, the more it will run away. Happiness comes from within. You have to feel it. And if you are not happy yourself, you cannot spread happiness to others.
Absolutely. And Dr. Mukesh Batra, I described you as somebody who's a doctor, homeopath, entrepreneur, a music aficionado, cultural aficionado, a great photographer. You always make time for friends. How are you able to do all this, And what are your lessons from your life? Because you had a good life. Right? That will come in handy to people who are watching this interview.
So, the first thing is, like, I always believe that people who say that I don't have time for anything are people who don't have the inclination. For something that you're passionate about, something that you love, something that you need in life, or something that you want to spread to other people, and if you have a purpose with a passion, you'll always find time to do it. So the two P's of having passion and having purpose go together. And then, time then comes from delegating work, because very often we are control freaks. We don't want to let anybody else make the mistakes and then learn from them. You have to let go. If you don't let go in life, whether it's physical or emotional, or whether it's authority, you are going to do somebody else's work, and you're never going to have the time to do what you want to do. So I've actually delegated my work. I've put systems and processes in place, and I think that gives me free time to do whatever I want to do. So I'm saying that's really the answer to the first question. The second, as far as my philosophy of life is concerned, and I have very simple 3 words, and that is attachment with detachment. I attach myself to everything that I do for the moment. When I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking of my next interview. I'm giving all of me to you.
Absolutely.
But once I step out, then I don't.
So you're mindful.
I don't.
You're in the moment.
Living in the moment.
The power of now, as Eckhart Tolle calls it.
So if you live in the now, you'll always be happy.
Absolutely. So the secret to happiness is to enjoy every moment and live in the now.
Yes.
Give it your best.
Absolutely.
So thank you for giving it your best while talking to me. This is Dr. Batra talking to Dr. Batra. I have learned some new things today. I hope you do. You read the book, Feel Good, Heal Good. And I'm telling you that this is not his last book. It's just his 10th book. We wish you luck and keep healing people.
Thank you so much.
And keep making people happy.
Thank you. Thank you.